It's just sad that Ukraine has been chosen to be the proxy for this to happen, and so many people have died in Ukraine in particular.
Yeah.
A lot of Russians have died as well, but nowhere near as many. The people of Ukraine, and we're seeing Zelensky's goons grab kids now and throw them in these vans and just take them off.
You see the reaction
with a meat grinder.
Mm-hmm. You see the reaction. That's why Poroshenko said a couple of months ago, you could have an election tomorrow, and Putin would kick Zelensky's ass. I mean, they hate this. And there is someone else, a woman who is deputy minister of whatever. I think it's minister of war or something. She said, we're never going to be done with this. We'll just switch hats. If there is ever a bad peace, or forced ceasefire, we're going to change hats. And then we're going to be partisans in the mountains and in the forests. We'll have guns. And I'm thinking, honey, listen, I think you're going to be alone. You're forgetting. This is more like Mussolini than anyone else. You're going to be hung over the balcony upside down and cut with knives until blood runs in the streets. People are going to dance when this yoke is overthrown. I think it will take a long time, and it's not. The Russians aren't stupid. They're not pretending that they're all going to be best buddies and friends, but this is a miserable attack on the people of Ukraine by the people that are in charge of Ukraine or can be made to be in charge of Ukraine. Yes, this guy says Ukraine was chosen precisely because it is next to Russia. Exactly. That's the thing they did wrong was be born. All right.
Dan, people who say it's Ukraine fighting Russia, that's how the war is classified in the media. Would you say more so it is NATO and US and British intelligence fighting Russia? That's who's pitted against each other, really. Would you say they are the three principles, or would you say there's more to it?
I'd say no. I'd say that. I mean, I think it's hard to distinguish, between who's doing what. I think that MI6 had a lot to do with Kursk and apparently a lot to do with this spider web thingy, and the British came in May of 2022 when they were having, this was over. They said they jumped in. Russia said, okay, look, see how close we can get to Kiev. If we want, we can shut you down. Okay, so let's just do this. We'll do most of Minsk. We'll have this. These people will be autonomous, but they'll still be under control. And Bojo comes in and he tells him, no, don't sign that. Okay, well, then that's, it has never been Ukraine. It's always been, that's a good triad, but it's the same, did NATO kill Lumumba, or was it the Belgian Congo, or was it like, it's the boys' club, really, the ruling class, and the people who run it or run it for them. Now you have an open wing that is, flagrant, like Callis, right, who comes out and say, it's more than a decade, Nathan, honey. It's 5 decades. The CIA were created in Ukraine. They just haven't been there for just a decade. They were the beginning of the Leave Behind series, not the Christian one. But if you go to the end of the war, and there was this coterie of fanatics, the people, the On to Moscow crowd. And, Roosevelt was like, well, they're crazy. And he said to his son, apparently, after he left Potsdam or after he met with Churchill, he said, wow, he's a real Tory, isn't he? Like he is for the war. Ugh, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And Truman took over and was immediately ambushed by these guys who believed in this and started the OSS, started NATO, all this thing. They had a plan ready to go for 100 nuclear bombs to devastate cities and towns in the Soviet Union. And what it was, kind of merged in with the Cold War and became the huge stalemate that we all grew up in. But the general idea became crazy. Like, no, what? No, we weren't going to rearm the Nazis. That's ridiculous. Who was going to rearm Hitler? That's no. You're getting that wrong, right? And carve it up just like Yugoslavia, a bunch of stands. They just call it Stanistan, And now you have people. These are people who have been in it, people whose grandfathers were Nazis and are now front and center. Baerbock is now the president of the General Assembly. Are you kidding me? And Kaja Kallas in Estonia, she uses exactly the same rhetoric. Wouldn't it be great if Russia was carved up into smaller bits? And then we wouldn't have to worry so much about them being so powerful. You're going to quote, it's going to be a bunch of little Estonias? You're going to make up languages too? I mean, it's astonishing that it is allowed to emerge and calls to memory for Russians, I'm sure, but also those of us who have our ears to the ground historically, that this is, Edward VIII. This is the part of the British aristocratic class that was not anti-Hitler. That Fanta giving, and Ford and these companies funding Hitler. Like, wait a minute. What is the? I mean, even Truman said if the Germans are doing bad, we'll jump in for the Russians. If the Russians are doing bad, we'll jump in for the Germans, and hopefully they'll all kill each other.
You've got a super chat here. Let me read this one.
Okay.
Have you seen the new NATO Brussels guys? It's a huge replica of a set of SS bolts.
Oh, yes.
The Nazi paramilitary force. Look up aerial view. So Germany is building Nazi buildings.
I have seen that.
Wow.
They look like swastikas. And that, I mean, it's, I don't know. Who approved those plans? I don't know. We got in trouble for that because we were trying to make a dollar sign in a high school band, and a few kids were missing. So if you imagine, it looked like a swastika. I got called into the principal's office. That was terrible. But
he's raised Germany there, and that which leads into my next set of questions, which was about red lines, because we're in this era now where technology and missiles are being provided to a country that otherwise couldn't produce these things itself and fire them into Russia. So it's only these outside vested interests that are keeping this going. And Germany recently mouthed off about sending certain missiles, and then wasn't there an indication that Russia would target manufacturers? So, for example, if Germany sends a missile, Ukraine fires that into the heart of Russia. Bam! Russia then hits the manufacturing plant in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, what against that is illogical? What you only get to attack this missile like a quarter of a second before it lands on your head? That's ridiculous. You go back to where it's from. That's always been the case. It's the case in international law. It's the case in anyone's moral compass. It's the case of anyone who is not completely cynical as a human being. You're doing this to us. Well, no, he did it. You know what? If you're in the street in the United States or any capital city and you got under some prosecutor, it's like, no, you know what happens. No. You thought about it with them and you waited in the car. You're a murderer. We're not going to let you plead down to anything else. And in this case, you're saying Mertz came up with some crap about, well, we can say that we trained them to make them, and we use it. So they were, it's like, you think because Italy does that with Gucci and Versace bags or Louis Vuitton, you take a $20 bag from China, put the zipper in Milan and sell it for $2,000? No, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. That is a German product. It's a German operation. Sending deep missiles into Russia, like who? Maybe they're not crazy, Shaun. Maybe they're really asleep. They're actually sleepwalking. They don't. So you want to slap them and say, do you understand what you just said?
But Daniel, if these demonic elites just want perpetual escalation, doesn't that fall into their hands? Because let's say German missiles go to Ukraine, they get fired over to Moscow, Russia bombs a German missile manufacturer in Germany. Doesn't that invoke Article 5?
Yeah, and it also is used by the same people go away. Sorry. The people who own all the voices, all of the publications, all of the amplified voices in the blogosphere, in print, in everything. And so you get people being sold a narrative that it's patriotic then to rise with the government and be and be pro-German because we're being attacked, etc., etc. They're masters at that too. So yeah, it does, and that's why the restraint. One of the reasons that I've wrestled with that, I talked about it a few minutes ago, about thinking that the restraint was maybe too much, too kind. And I realize day by day that no, that's sometimes you're only playing into their hands. You're threading a needle. Talk about, Jesus and the camel and the eye of the needle or whatever. Putin has been threading his way to heaven. I got to tell you, the first thing I cannot believe. Well, we can attack some people, but not all of people. It's incredible that you have to predict the other guy's insane premonitions. Say, no, you know what? Then then we'll just do this. And people also remember, Putin is not a hardliner. He has hardliners in his government and in his country, not just in the Duma, in the streets. West wants to forget about all of that. They want Navalny or some liberal idiot who got 7 votes that the CIA bought for him in a Moscow election. That is who the opposition is. You know who the opposition is in Russian politics? The opposition is the Communist Party. These are the people. They get 15% of the votes, whatever. They are the biggest non-ruling party. And so there is an anchor there. That's an anchor that has never gone away. That's why they still have reasonable retirement. That's why they still have free education and healthcare. That is a huge part of who Russia is. But also, it's the reminder of who they were and who they want to be. And that's why someone, I think, who is as respectable and smart as Putin. I'm not in love with the guy. I am always impressed. Like, holy shit. How did he do that? Someone said, you're into, do you ever feel like, you just want to punch someone? And he said, yeah, all the time. The trick is not to. You just don't. Duh, be a man.
Let me read this and comment. You can check out your notifications again. Chili's saying, I just wonder why US elites want war with Russia, while all factories, whole production is placed not in us, but in China, India, Vietnam. So in my perspective, I'll hand this over to Dan in a minute. in my perspective, it's extremely complex. So, for example, Ukraine represents so many, billions of dollars worth of resources. Russia must be 100 times the resources of Ukraine. So the globalists have already divvied up Ukrainian assets. Go back to Burisma, the Biden crime family, etc.
Yeah.
Imagine if they could use Ukraine to collapse Russia and divide all of those Russian assets up amongst the globalist banking mafia. That would be the absolute jackpot for them. When Napoleon went in, when Hitler went in, what did they do? They seized oil, they seized the resources, and they funnel all that back to their own empires. It's just been the way this has operated for hundreds of years. But there's also geopolitical considerations, power plays, and all kinds of complex cross currents at work simultaneously. It's not as simple as just doing it for the money, is it, Dan?
Yeah, I think that is. I think that is completely on point. I'm going around closing everything I can find. I'm going to get up and start closing real windows. I don't know, but yes, it's not all about money, but certainly it is. One of the things that you get from that, and you forgot Charles the 12th of Sweden, I think was earlier than in the 17th century. So there have been, even more invasions than we realize, and also the slow moving one. Sure, this is NATO, but NATO's been doing this for 40 years. This is like not one invasion. It goes everywhere. The Sino-Soviet split, all of that comes to the same point, which is attacking, dividing, controlling, and exploiting resources in Russia, which is not anti-communist. That is really important for people to realize. The hatred of Russia is the demonization of people you want something from that you don't have. It's that basic on a personal, psychological level. That was very useful after 1917. And for the first 5-7 years, they had 100 different armies in their country fighting against them. It's amazing that they even survived to World War II, let alone survived World War II. And you look at, again, with the factors of orders of magnitude, what they did. People said that they couldn't have won without help from the West. It's like, well, if you got a 15-1 stack of Russian legions or German divisions facing Russia versus those facing Western Europe, then you have to be talking about a 15-1 split in your expenses. And I really don't think you gave 85% of the money you raised from taxes or investors to give them more tanks. And if you didn't, then why am I talking to you? It's like, did you not take math? Is maybe education isn't supposed to be dumbed down for another 20 years. This is in the 50s, right? And so there's no way to come back from that. There is no way to well, I guess there is, because we're watching it, but to keep avoiding, ignoring, downplaying what Russia has been through. And the only thing, and this is what Putin's popularity is about, the only thing that has done that is Russians themselves bought into it. I studied this. It was for 100 years. There was attempts to suppress the Russian language. This is actually making a written literature history in Russian language was an enormous challenge, because they were, cousins of Habsburg, whatever, different royal families across Europe who were just biding time. And most of the country was serfs. And so you can't just say that this is normal. We know, because guess what? You don't. You don't know. And that is what Westerners are incredibly arrogant about. It's shocking. Like, you say, well, I don't think that's, I don't know if you're smart or if you're kind. What is that? That you say, like, I'm not going to, I don't know enough to say this guy is an idiot that I'm talking to, but I'm going to look that up later because that doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's how people need to read and think and talk. I think that's the way, one of the reasons that your shows are very popular and why this this growing of search for information in the internet sphere is because people want that. They want to say, like, yeah, I looked that up though, and it turns out that that was crap. And it's shocking the percentage of what you heard. There's a new book came out. Khrushchev lied, from a Russian scholar, and it's deconstructing all of what we have accepted as dogma, absolute truth. Stalin ate babies for breakfast. He ate babies for lunch, and then he ate the babies for dinner, and then he spit them all out and liquefied them. Liquidated. Oh, that's and he was, the 1956 speech was full of distractions and fabrications, and this has been proven through Russian documents through the years since they've all been available. But I haven't read that particular one, but I just saw this the other day and thinking about what this means. What is the truth? What is the history? What is the basis on which we are all balancing our understanding of Russia's always bad, Russia's always wrong? If you could stop someone and say, wait, what do you mean by that, though? That first part you started, that's not true. Oh.
So, Dan, if you were Putin right now, in light of the events of the last week, the attacks, etc., what would your response be? Just to do nothing, or just wait, really, calculate?
Really unfair, Shaun. I'm sorry. I'm squirming, and it's not because windows are open. I don't know. I mean, it is shocking to think. Someone said he's sitting there. There's a picture of him pensive, and someone commented, he looks afraid or something else. I think that he is seriously at the end of the rope of restraint. He has been trying to keep many forces at bay. Because like you pointed out, I think he thinks that it plays into their hands. But I think that if I were that, I would, I'm not gonna bomb London and Washington and Brussels yet, right? I would do exactly what has been done. Instead, they gave the memorandum to this a cabal who's meeting them in Istanbul and said, this is what we want. These are the issues, and this is what needs to be solved. And I think what I would feel is resolve. I think that it is like, how you feel that relief sometimes when you're saying, I should give him another chance. I should give him another chance. I should give him another chance. Like, okay, dude, he not only did he steal my car, he lied in order to steal my car and then ran over my puppy. No, he's not coming. He's not coming to Christmas dinner. I don't feel bad about that. That's stupid. The guy's an idiot. And of course, everyone knows this because you feel that. And finally, God, it's family. I'm supposed to feel. You feel that there is some relief, and I'm sure that kind of resolve is healthy. Then, of course, they have a 300-year-old general staff. The general staff is older than the Soviet Union, older than has been doing this for a very long time. And so they have plans for all of this. And I think that I would be choosing targets for Oreshnik now to up the game. That is to say, first of all, you have private conversations with Starmer. Keith, darling, you are idiot. In Russia, we say you are idiot. We don't use this little word "an" because we don't need. You are idiot. Donald also too are idiot. Don't do this again. You don't seem to be listening, but this is not, we're not playing, we're not lying. The targets are already down. They're already chalked out. I got Zoloviev, what's his name there? He looks really serious. It's kind of scary. And he's saying, well, we got them all pegged in, Commander. We're ready to go. And you have to pick a lower level, hopefully, to do what he's been doing, escalate slightly to meet the challenge and show them. But, this happened in February with the Oreshnik in Sumy, in the Sumy area, or near Krovsk, I forget. And it didn't teach them anything. So again, that's why I started by feeling uncomfortable, because I don't know. And you read if you read the Russian sources, if you read Russian people commenting and pro-Russians, people who are from the global south, who understand that this is why it's like, the hell with it. This guy's a pussy. Come on, go for it. And I'm thinking, why didn't he? What? He should have marched into Kiev on a white horse with a big sword, cut off Zelensky's head, and managed to hold on to his hair at the time so that he could throw it before impregnating it with a nuclear grenade, and it would bounce off Starmer's head, hit Macron and Trump. Why hasn't he done that? Why isn't he serious? Dude, he's like, he took Crimea, Zaporozhye. I don't know. I don't know what more you could expect. What is happening is like the opposite of quicksand. The quicksand turns into liquid by slowly, shifting. And I think the opposite, things are slowly solidifying. Goodbye, Christina. Oh, sorry. Hi, Christina. You can say that the world's, I've always said that outside NATO stand, no one ever believed this crap. Then the NATO stand is those 22 countries or whatever, put a big fence around them, maybe something over the top to keep them in. But outside of that, the solidarity is growing. Now, just this week, you had China come out and declare that the U.S. is responsible for the war in Ukraine. It sounds logical, something that I've always believed and that I've been writing about for years. But they have a really strict rule about interference, about what they say about other people's internal affairs, and they will not take that step. They didn't do it, and they would always abstain rather than veto, stuff like that. So it sounds small, but that means Vlad, do what you need to do. We're with you. And that's pretty big, you know. And this is happening in West Africa, that the Chinese and the Russians are saying, look, listen, if you're having a terrorism problem with these jihadists, we know where they come from, right? We can help with that. We can also build you a gold refinery, which a Russian company is doing in Niger. This is happening all over the world. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in one direction. They're tiny little, it's like a garden. Things grow and they interweave. And that is, I think, what is really bad for the Americans, is that they hated Biden so much that they could vote against or for something that was against him, when instead what I think, and I'm not just being biased because it goes with my ongoing theory that the worst president in history is always the current one. So don't ask me, you know, it's just, you're at a certain point in the destruction, self-destruction of American empire. And so the worst mistakes are being made right now. And no matter what happens, they're going to be worse than the guy before you, because you are drawn into a different vortex. And now I see that happening now. It's like, oh my God, this is outrageous. The thing that happened with Ramaphosa in the Oval Office, or with China with the tariffs, this is time for other people. Not only have they been restrained in not pulling the rug out, but they have kept their feet on the rug to prevent it from being pulled out from under them, because they see the interweave. They see that the dollar is important in what they're doing, and that the integration is important. And what you're doing with a fanatic like jerk, basically unkind, unthinking human, as your persona, your front man, is exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. All these people are ready to say, hey, you know what? Go to hell. We're pretty sick of you, you know. And you know why? You want to know why? Hold on. Let me find 800 reasons. And he says, I'll give you some more. You're ugly and fat and stupid. Huh. Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't really help the discussion a lot, but whatever. We'll talk to you later.
Dan, I've hogged you for over an hour now, and you've got almost 50 questions pending.
Oh my
do you have
God.
time? Do you have time to answer some questions?
Yeah. I'll give it a shot. I don't make any promises, just like Putin. Like,
all right. So
where do you see? See, I'm not even.
I'll read them. I'll read them. Do you think China has technology to neutralize the West's nuclear capability?
I haven't read anything about it. I know that there are very good advancements in shipping, and I know that they are on the verge of hypersonics, and they are integrating with the Russians so that they can present a front for this. But I see, again, this is kind of like all the arguments about 9/11 or something. I don't really want to talk about thorium and what, I mean, I don't know. Not thorium. What was it? What is the thing? the metal that melts. I'll go with LIHOP, which is let it happen on purpose. I don't know that they have technology that will neutralize the American weapons, but I do know that they are building a network. You talk about this dipshit little thing called a spider web in some containers in Ukraine and Russia, sorry. They are building the biggest spider web in the world, in the history of the world. And that has already started to neutralize American nuclear weapons. So, yeah, that's a long answer. Sorry. What's the next one?
Are there no longer any rules for anything anymore?
Yeah, I can see that. It's scary. It is like, my wife and I, like, we're like, oh God, I don't want to read. I don't want to hear the news. I don't want to just. This is crazy. What? They thought they could do that? They didn't think there's anything that you're supposed to behave with. And to be fair, in the American context, Trump has fired that up. First of all, by saying everything against him was a personal attack and it was all fake news, and and some of that was true. So people would kind of glom onto it. But then to get in and say, like, what is this? Who is this idiot? He's shouting at this guy. He's basically swearing at attacking a reporter personally. Like, gross. Who the hell is this guy? Anyway.
Let me read this comment and get your reaction. Putin is going to have to respond to be able to control his own Dr. Strangeloves. Thank God it is Putin on that side who will do this, hopefully, in a measured, controlled way, and he will call Trump first. What do you think about that?
I say you would never have reached him at home just on the weekend. Maybe you should try the following number. That's with Premier Kissoff, right? When the original script. You tried. Hello, Dmitry. Well, we went and did a silly thing. He sent a plane to attack your country. And everyone has Dr. Strangelove and Jack Ripper. I mean, the biggest thing in that movie that people don't really admire is that Jack Ripper was not only a great acting performance, but also the personality. Like, we can do that. He'll see everything. He'd see the big board. The people who are obsessed with their position and their power and saying we can, when they have to fight against each other. And he says, yeah, but that base will be heavily defended. With all due respect, sir, my boys will brush them aside without much trouble. And you think, wow, it's not their enemy who's their enemy, it's anyone. And so, yes, that is a little bit scary, because that's what I was talking about earlier. He has to then act against it. And that is one of the reasons that I'm so angry and not disappointed, but I guess proven, I don't know, prescient with the cabal in power. Don't they realize? They'll say Putin, 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 Putin this, Putin that, Putin that. He has a lot of people that he has to please at home. He's not the hardliner. Are you crazy? You're putting him in a box all the time. And they're talking about, we have to put some pressure. Who's that idiot? The South Carolina jerk. I forget now. Lindsey Graham. You have people like that running around and just destroying everything when they can. And I don't know as much about the Russian side because I don't live through, the day-to-day of it. But every system has some of that, and you have to be careful. And you also, to be honest, you have to be respectful. Like, he has to take their positions into account. Not everyone. They're not really Dr. Strangeloves. They're people who say, look, Mr. President, enough is enough. We're losing people, tens of thousands of people. How slow are we going to go? I mean, come on. So
I'll read you the next one. I don't believe Putin is a great person. He has done some bad stuff.